Thanks for coming around to Shanthitown.
Glad to be here.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
Welcome, welcome.
As always, we are replete with technical difficulties. And let's hope that this episode we at least get a running video plus audio and maybe some nice transitions.
Let's see.
Anyway, this is like everything a practice. And with any practice, we need to repeat and repeat and repeat until we become complete.
Practice
Sounds
makes
great.
perfect.
So, anybody have any news today?
No news, but if nobody has any topic, I might be able to come up with. Since we had a difficulty again, and we often talk about the ashram, and recently we decided to have Pablo, who is not amateur, has professional career on construction,
Yes.
as a manager of the construction. And since we are amateur on these techs, we had the difficulty. But at the same time in life, especially like our community, we want to be able to do quite a lot of things on by ourselves.
Yes.
So then, how do we see amateur doing things or asking for professional help or being able to do it by ourselves? How do we find the balance or the ideal ratio? Or
Well, look at Pablo has arrived, but only because we started. If there was nothing here, he wouldn't have come. So even though we were, amateurs in our organization and in everything, because we started and because we produced something, it attracted the master.
If you build it, Pablo will come.
Yes.
Yeah, or if there is an appearance of something being built, I'll come and investigate. And sure enough,
There was an appearance.
yeah, there was an appearance, and yeah.
what was appealing to you?
To be honest, the appeal to me was the apparent sense of community and the I guess what I've discovered to be more like the karma yoga approach to getting things done down here. I was sat up there in Tokyo. We were doing stuff on our other house, me and my lovely wife, and it was great to see on the SNS and the Instagram and the Facebook all these things, and happy clappy kind of community, and I just want to be part of that, get involved, and and obviously having met Wayland before at the TTC a couple of years ago, through Cassie's involvement with the Zurich community, I wanted to offer what help I could, and I had nothing going on too much, so come down and see what it's about, and here I am 5-6 months later, still here. And on the whole, even though it may not be apparent to everyone in the group, I'm enjoying myself in my own way. And my background is construction. It's been 36 years now, sort of man and boy. And all I'm trying to do is, to use a nautical context, steer a ship in the correct direction towards its destination, if you want to use a sort of bit of a euphemism. And to be fair, a lot of the hard work, or the groundwork's certainly been done, and I'm just trying to finesse the process. And what with the rest of the stuff that's going on, with the sort of community at large, and certainly the ashram, bigger than the one building, I think if we continue and if I can corral everyone into the right direction, that we should see some nice progress. But amateurs, no one knows how to do anything until they're shown. And like Wayland said before, it's repetition, practice. I think that goes for most things in life. So we just got to keep doing what we're doing and finessing it, getting better each time. So that's the long, short answer.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. So for me, when I started everything, for me the hard part is because we're a yoga school, and like one of my friends and students, Nachi, she commented, "Are you a yoga teacher or a property developer?" And I was thinking to myself, well, it must be being a proper yoga teacher means you should be able to fit into any role if you're proper. And the hard part is because most of our community, most of my students, most of the people around the world, they're all yoga people. So moving them from that context into kind of construction and farming and eco-development, it seems like it should be easy transition, but it's really not. Because most people practicing yoga, they're not, and especially in Japan, they're usually like women who don't have any idea about construction or very little desire to do anything like this. And it seems like Japan's very developed already. The guys have already suffered for hundreds of years doing this. Why should we have to do anything? It's everything set up for us, right? So it's really hard to move the consciousness into, yoga it's not just sitting on your mat and then afterwards having tea and eating cookies and enjoying. It's a whole approach to everything in life. And for the yoga teachings to be proper, it needs an ashram, it needs a proper environment. So this is just the beginning. I have a much bigger vision in terms of how the ashram can grow from its location, but we have to make sure the location is proper first. So
it's about setting up as I see it, setting up the infrastructure for for the thing to grow into the farming and the sort of exactly. the balance of the working with the environment and doing things the way that that we all agree that we want to do it, and it's a starting point, and it's it's a jog.
And
we're not running.
Even this idea of karma yoga is very difficult, because even the yoga that everybody's consuming in the world, it's consumer based, it's capitalist based. Even though that's not the original intention, that's the way that it's packaged and marketed and then presented to the people. So then when they try to make a transition to karma yoga, it's actually, even though karma yoga and yoga should be synonymous, two sides of the same coin, it seems like it's a million miles away from so this is also very difficult.
Is there any community that's really successful on having karma yoga really active?
Well, I mean, almost every traditional yoga community in India knows all this stuff. There's so many.
I mean, is there any one going on right now, or it's all in the past?
They've been going. No, they're still going. There's so many. There's so many ashrams that are still running, and there's so much karma yoga going on all the time. Sevas and sevaks. In Japan, maybe zero. Maybe there's one. I don't know about them.
What about in Canada?
In Canada, there's a few. I've been to a few kind of ashram. Not really ashram, but it's still really hard. Like, it's really difficult. We're all capitalist driven. Okay? We're all driven by this idea of money and needing money to survive, and then working for money. And so the idea of doing volunteer work, it exists. That's something that exists, and most people don't want to do it because they have no time, no energy, no desire. And then the idea of karma yoga is like you're actually investing, you're working not even for volunteering for an organization, not even for a feeling of benefit to society. Your ultimate purpose is to work to purify your attachments to reward, to your, like what Pablo talked about last podcast when we were talking about like, why do humans have to pay to live? Why are we the only creature on earth that has to give money and to tap ourselves into a slave system?
We're indoctrined into it, and breaking that is like the same with any, I guess, any addiction, no matter what it is, alcohol, drugs, or whatever it might be. Breaking it after so many years of growing up and seeing it, it's difficult. It's not easy, and it's probably not always 100% possible. I don't know if it will be, but it's like Waylon says, that purification process is probably may take you a lifetime, may take you 10 lifetimes to get there. But hey, you don't know if you don't try.
Yeah, and really in our society, we're born into this culture where you don't make your own clothes. You go to the store to buy your clothes. You don't grow your own food. Usually you go to the store to buy your food. So really what they're doing at the ashram is kind of going way back to the old way of doing things where, like you were saying, Kenshan, at the beginning, you have to learn many different skills. And so you can all do it yourself and you don't have to rely on big corporations, government. But this is a way to be free.
It's great because I think it returns to that old structure of community where basically, no one has every skill, but within your community, you would probably have most of the base ones covered. So it would be that exchange system or, a cooperative. Someone's going to be able to bake bread. Someone's going to be able to chop wood. Someone's going to be able to light your fire. Someone's going to be able to deliver your babies. Someone, and you naturally slotted into that because that was the way of life. But as Seth says, now we live in a really instant kind of world where we can go and buy that, go and change that for that. We don't need to.
We become so hyper specialized.
Yeah.
That we don't even simple repairs in a house. Like the average person living in a house and they have a leaky faucet, they just call somebody in to do a simple tightening job, and they get charged hundreds of dollars for it. When you just need to go.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. A lot of the old skills are lost, but it's just for the enrichment of society. We've changed now. But then there's a lot of us, certain ages, that don't really know how to use a MacBook that well and have to defer to someone with those kind of skills. So the skill sets develop, but I guess in the sense of the ashram, we need to kind of find that balance because we still embrace the modern, ways, and technology is still going to be part of the whole ethos to get it out there. So it's about regaining some of the older things, spreading that knowledge around, and also, enhancing and using and utilizing the modern and bringing it all encompassing. That's the way that I envisage.
Combining ancient practices with modern technology.
Exactly.
It has to be a compromise because to go either in one direction or the other entirely will ultimately lead us to doom.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. It's not like rejecting everything for the sake of going back in time. It's about incorporating everything together and everyone's individual input. It's useful.
And it's interesting too because when you find especially. I've been mostly involved in the yoga community, but inside of that international movement, there's a lot of people that they get so attached to being purified that they judge everybody for consuming a little bit of a MSG or something, and they put a massive ethical weight on someone just for not being totally clean and perfect, But then nobody, not one of them, understands where the food they're eating comes from. They don't really understand what they're actually doing. They just have a very limited judgment based on this. Like you said before, Pablo, there's no such thing as a silent vegan, I think you said.
I've not met one yet. No, that's true.
They usually become activists and very loud.
Yeah.
Did you have that phase when you were young?
Well, like any young person, I've been vegetarian for 23 years. I was vegan for 7 or 8. By the time I became vegan, I was not really activist at all. I only ever talked about it with my students who inquired. Okay. My rule was if anybody asked me about my diet, then I will talk about it. Otherwise, I'm just going to be.
Yeah.
But at the very beginning, when you're young, and I started when I was 17, I got this new thing.
Yeah. And it's
go to my parents. What have you been doing your whole life? You've been wasting your life.
It's great.
I remember when I was maybe 20 or something. Back then we had some movement of carrying your own chopsticks.
Yeah.
So everybody, kind of conscious people were carrying. But then there are some people who don't. I was carrying 4 pairs of chopsticks. When I go to restaurant, this is yours, this is yours. No, you're not consuming any plastic or wooden disposable. Then people are like, okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it's admirable, but I mean, there's also like, going back to the sort of like non-silent vegan thing. I mean, maybe it's a bit unfair picking on vegans because
it's a fair stereotype.
But yeah, unfortunately, in my experience, they tend to be that way. But no one likes to be told they're doing something wrong anyway. Taking the moral high ground in any kind of situation. I don't know whether that's like an ego feeding thing for the person doing it or whatever. But okay, I get it. But okay, it's your life, and I'm happy for you, kind of thing. If we see something that's clearly wrong, we should speak up because you're complicit in anything that it's always that difficult fine line between and also I think it depends on the situation. Yeah, but the vegans, unfortunately, they do get a lot of the flack about being these sort of sort of natural fiber wearing kind of
I guess the problem is vegan is basically saying don't be violent towards animals, right? But there's many ways to be violent in our lives. So to focus on food and not killing animals or hurting cows, it's such a narrow way of looking at being moral or non-violent.
No, agreed. Yeah, but
they might be wearing some leather shoes. Eating only vegan, but not really vegan on the other aspects.
Yeah,
but also they might be violent in their way they talk to people.
Exactly, about not eating meat and about not wearing leather. Paradox kind of thing going on.
And actually, when I was a child, I was a vegetarian basically from the time I was born. I didn't really even choose it. I feel like it was just natural to me. And my brothers, who are very like idealistic, kind of like vegan, they're not vegan, but they're very idealistic, like, do the right thing. They were mad at me because I didn't have a reason to be vegetarian, or because they were like,
you couldn't justify why you would.
Like, they would respect me if it was because I didn't want to harm animals.
Yeah.
But because it was just I don't want to eat meat for not even a reason. They kind of like were mad at me.
Yeah, that's great. If it's not reason enough, right, for them.
But for me, that's the true reason, is because there is no reason.
Yeah, exactly.
A little paradoxical.
Oh dear. But anyway, and we're not singling out vegans here at all, because I respect everyone's choice to live their life however they want to live it. Exactly.
We don't want to.
No, exactly.
I mean, to this day, I'm still vegetarian. I was vegan for many years. I was fruitarian, which is very rare. And when it comes to the diet, especially food, because this is kind of like the base need of the biological system. It needs to have some input to have energy. So people become so attached to their food, incredibly so. So most people, if you talk to them about their diet, there's no moving in that. And they'll kill you for that. They will, for sure, eventually. And eat you. And maybe they'll eat you. There were people that did eat other people, for sure. And they were very attached to that as well. So, ultimately, respect is important. Respecting life. It's really important to acknowledge and understand the animals. And even the ones who are killing them and eating them, at least, the very least, just acknowledge and understand the source of it. And then also try to understand that they are a creature and a being like you. And then, of course, I can say, having gone through changing my diet many times, it's possible to be very, very minimal and still survive. But then most people want to enjoy. They are very much tongue-oriented, taste bud-oriented, and they want to delight the senses, because life is pretty mundane, and if you have no delightful sensations, then you make yourself a little crazy. So I understand this. It makes total sense. And basically, you can't change people by talking. You can only change by living example and then showing. And then just like when we're children, we look and we just copy and we learn. So it has to be something attractive. If it's unattractive, and if you're very unhealthy, if you're a vegan who's very unhealthy, big black sacks under your eyes, very thin and pale, and you're yelling at everybody, no one's going to listen to you.
No, it's not the way to convince people that that their lifestyle choices are probably
become a shining example of health. Yeah, and then you'll have a great amount of followers. People will follow your way.
Well, I guess that cuts across. If you're a shining example in everything you do, not just for your dietary choice or whatever, it's then people are going to respect, I think, and take more notice of you and what you got to say.
To me, it's not about what you do; it's about how you do it. And that's true for everything. So you can eat meat, and like you said, if you bless it, if you kill the animal in a humane way, and like the Native Americans understood this, that when they ate meat, they knew they had like a relationship with the animals, and it was a sacred thing. And so I think they ate meat, but they did it in a conscious way.
I always had a weird feeling about blessing things though, because if some alien came down and said, "I'm going to bless you," and then kill you and eat you, I would still say, "I don't like to be blessed or killed." If you're going to do it this way,
I agree.
But I like the what are the African tribesmen in the Serengeti? The
Watusi?
Not the Watusi. The ones that are they're the ones that they just cut. They have a cut on the cow.
Oh, and they drink a bit of the blood.
They drink the Maori. The Maori.
Yeah.
They'll just cut a little and they'll drink it. And they keep it alive, but they're draining the lifeblood. I think that if you're gonna consume animal protein, that's probably the best way to do it. But even better is to, like Hindu style, take the milk. Take the milk. You get the blood automatically in the milk.
I think also most animals as well can survive with like 3 legs, right? So you can just probably. I just don't have that back leg and carry on.
Well, I won't be happy though if I were there.
No,
I survive, but
I mean, I don't know. I know that when sort of dogs and cats are injured, I'm not suggesting we should. I mean, we obviously every animal is sacred, but they live quite happy lives with 3 legs. So,
you remind me. Did you ever read? You know the movie Dune?
Of course.
Yeah. So if you go deep into the Dune series, like this is like book 6. There's one group of people, I can't remember what they're called, but there's no woman, and they're like, why is there no woman? And finally they investigate really deep into their society. Why is there no woman? They go to their planet. So what they did to the woman is they turned them into very large birthing machines. And they plugged them into these things, and the women they turned into these huge, massive, just birthing factories. And they basically just used them purely for their birthing technology.
Producing and then
they produced all sorts of clones and creatures and all these. The men weren't even really men anymore. They were kind of clones.
Okay.
And this is what I really like about Frank Herbert, who wrote the books, is that he's going really deep into the possibilities of our technology, like where it can go. Yeah, so I don't know why it was reminding me of this, but it's like using life for its purpose only, and not even like
not acknowledging anything deeper than it's an object and how can we use it, right?
A woman is just a birthing machine, and a man is just a sperm creating machine, and then an animal is just a flesh
food source.
How they look like? Are they happy on the I don't know, movie or book? I don't know.
No, that was never made into the movie though.
I mean, none of them were. That particular culture, the name is gonna come back to me in the future, but.
No, it wasn't the Fremen.
Nobody in this situation can really be happy, eh?
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some description about like how they behave or what
they're basically emotionless.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a work of fiction, of science fiction, and fantastic though. Frank Herbert is a great author, and then even the old movie Dune and the new one stands up pretty well too, man. It's really. If you've never read it or seen them, I recommend it. It's great.
Interesting,
Very interesting.
Yeah, he goes into all sorts of things about Zen, and then Sufi, and then like Buddhism, and then Islam, and he was kind of talking about Arrakis being the sand.
Yeah, Arrakis.
The spice, which is the oil. It's kind of like a modern take on like the exploitation of oil in the Middle East as well.
Yeah. Never one drop of rain on Arrakis.
Yeah, the resource, and that reminds me of the news, right, about the Americans destroying the pipeline for the war, the proxy war that's going on in Ukraine and Russia, and how if we were really out to help each other, they would never destroy that stuff. They would try to keep the human ties together. Even your enemy, if you treat them like a friend, maybe they become your friend eventually. But if you always treat them like an enemy, There's always going to be opposition.
Well, this goes back to the whole capitalism and keeping the oil and the dollars moving. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's capitalism. It's more of like structures of power.
Oh, yeah, when I'm saying, I mean the monetary system and the base material, you know, which is.
I would just make a distinction that capitalism is more just like free trade at its heart. That's all it is. It's like you create something, you can trade it or sell it to other people. But you know, destroying the pipeline and all this funny business that goes on, I would say that's more. Yeah, money's involved now.
It's more power,
but it's more about power.
The power play.
Control, power.
Well,
it's Machiavelli.
It controls the money. That's the power.
But even before capitalism, that stuff was going on. Monarchies.
Guess we just we're looking at it like that. But it was always a push for gathering of riches and you know, also subjugating, you know, the weaker. And,
Last episode, we almost went deep into the conspiracy rabbit hole, but we lacked.
We lacked some real proper input.
You don't need me for that.
I don't need you for that. But you know, I spent too many years going in that rabbit hole. I just like to comment as opposed to like dig too deep.
Well, I'd say you don't have to go into the rabbit hole. I mean, you can just acknowledge that powerful people collude to do things that are not in the interest of everybody else.
Oh, absolutely.
And they don't even need to collude directly. Just following their own ambition is colluding with that ambitious energy.
Yeah, they have similar interests.
Yeah, the greed.
Yes.
So then I often wonder, like, who started the system of the, for example, government or like authorities? Because, you know, we often talk or feel like they are like using us or exploiting us, but at the same time, I know quite a lot of us don't want to do many things. Like in Japanese, we say 3 Ks. In Japanese case, like kiken, dangerous, and kitanai, dirty, and what was the other one? Kiken, kitanai, kitsui,
difficult,
or tiring. So either instead of doing it yourself, rather just push it to other people. So even though we say politicians are using us, at the same time, most people don't want to be responsible.
We're using them too, actually.
Yeah, so I wonder who actually started the system.
Well, yoga says that Krishna started the system, God himself, because people are not totally equal. We're all programmed with different capacities, desires to do different things. But as all systems, they became corrupted over time. So the Varna Ashram talks about a time when the king treated the people, they were philosopher kings, they were enlightened, and they treated the people with love. And they were like children to them. They would never hurt them or exploit them. But then slowly, as the ages pass, the system degenerates. The people become corrupted. First to become corrupted were the Brahmins, the priest caste, where they would just wear the clothes and they would take all of the benefit. They were just spiritual in dress alone. And then the next to degenerate would be the kingdoms, the rulers. And now they're very corrupted now. And then the next one to go is the business people, the people running things. And this is kind of the last institution that we're really worshiping now. We call the Vaishyas. And then so as this age continues, eventually we'll see that degenerate totally. And when that happens, we'll all be flattened and scrounging in the dirt like rats.
Just waiting for Kalki.
Something like this.
So then who has the potential, or like who or which caste or, I don't know, kinds of people have the potential to like reverse it or stop the corruption or make things better? Or
I mean, that's like asking, how can we reverse aging? It's not going to be possible. So it's in God's hands alone. So it means, there's no hope for us to reverse that, because it's like a tide. It's like a if a tsunami is coming towards you, who can stop the tsunami?
I don't necessarily agree. Though.
He doesn't. This is our
I don't agree with that
Like,
either.
well, Ken said that people created government because they didn't want to be responsible, which is what I agree with also. Like, we don't need a government among us here because we can all talk and we can work things out and nobody's an authority.
We need government. Who's running the power? Huh? The things we're talking in,
Oh,
who's running the
electricity,
power? Who made the clothes we're wearing?
Well, that's not government.
No, but the government creates the structure which allows for the trade of all that and allows for the movement of all of that.
Oh, that's if you're looking at the world at large, but we're talking about the more of a cellular thing, I think.
It's capitalism that created
Yeah.
all those things we're using.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, like, it would have happened without government.
Well, what is government? Government ultimately is organization, right? And by now it's at a very massive scale, right? So, like, for example, in the ashram, I'm the spearhead, but I require a few of my top heads to rely on, like Pablo and Kentaro. And there's a few others. But if just some punk comes off the street and wants to try to control the ashram, it's like, no, we have a system set up already. It's kind of a government. So there's always, anytime humans come together, there is a form of government that's created.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible to escape that.
Yeah, there's going to be hierarchy. There's going to be organization, but it doesn't necessarily have to be government. When I think of government, I think of authority, violence, because the government has to use violence to stay in its authority.
We're more of a cooperative committee.
Yes.
Where we will listen to each other, and it will be generally a collective decision, or certainly, there'll be collectivism, and then we weigh up our options, whatever it might be.
But again, if that punk off the street comes in and starts stealing or starts using violence, what are we going to do?
Oh, absolutely.
We need to either rely on the government to police them, or we're going to have to police them with our own violence.
It's not violence, it would be self-defense.
Well, it's violence.
It doesn't.
It's
I think
defense,
there's a difference between self.
Okay, so you're talking about aggression as opposed to defense.
Yeah.
Either way, that needs to be utilized.
Yeah, and I would say you have a right to that because if he comes to the ashram and you bought that land, you built the structures, you put your energy, so that's your property. That's your domain.
For sure. And so and that even the idea of property, right? Like the native people in North America, where we're from, Canada and America, when the white people came over and they started trading them for land, the natives, they had no concept of land ownership. They didn't. They think, okay, they're just trading here to stay here. But then the white people are like, oh, they gave us this land, so now it's ours. But the native people were like, whoa, you don't own it. Nobody can own land. It's impossible to own land.
Yeah.
How can you own land?
Which is true. Yeah.
Which is true, right? So, but those two different ideologies, who won in the end? The ones who had the violence.
That doesn't. I don't think that correlates with the sort of idea of government, but what they did in that situation. Well, I mean, I wasn't there at the time, but that was more of a steamroller effect, where they basically came, shall we say, possibly a bit more technologically advanced, with numbers organised, whereas I'm assuming again, because I wasn't there at the time, there were little pockets of Native Americans rather than a unified. And they were like, hey, we can take out this little lot, that little lot, that little lot.
And they lack the immune system and the technology to
have some plague. From England.
I mean, that's a good point. Nobody can own land. It's God's, it's nature's, it's
comes back to my point about we're the only race of people that pay to live on the earth that we essentially spawned on and evolved on, or created on, if you want to go there.
But we have to be careful that communists are the people that say nobody owns anything, and then that really ends in like mass death and disaster because they create this state that says, oh, everybody's going to be equal, nobody owns anything.
Well, everyone was equal under communism except for some were slightly more equal than others.
But that's why I think private property has to be respected. Like, you own your body. Nobody can commit violence against your body at least. And so anyway, I mean, there's a distinction there between private property and what is nature's or
American. Very American, this idea. Yeah.
Not necessarily.
I mean, the whole. Well, I mean, I don't really want to start talking about communism in this section, but not for any other reason. There, I think it will run on a bit longer than we've got. But
There's no end to this.
yeah, I mean, if we're taking the literal sense of the word government, right? That's to govern, to keep people in line, as you pointed out, Seth, and pretty much subjugate and say, this is how it's going to be. You're going to do that. Communism, community, is what's come out of where we were brought up. Certainly, where I was brought up, communism was a dirty word because I was brought up in the West, in the UK, and we were taught that everything about that system was terrible. People were eating their babies, they had no food, and there was this cruel dictator at the head of it all, you know, with a big moustache. Right, so that I spent as an adult a lot of time in the former Eastern Bloc, which was under communism up until the late 80s. And I met a lot of Eastern Europeans, clearly a lot of Eastern Europeans and all of these countries. It wasn't like we were taught at all. It was pretty good.
Well, it depends on the place. Like millions of people died in the Holodomor in Ukraine.
The pogroms and stuff. Yes,
yeah.
I mean,
Depends on where you are.
I'm not done. Well, I spent a lot of time in the. Anyway, you know, okay, yeah, we can pick out that kind of thing, and you're quite right. But if then the British also, if we take the Irish potato famine in the early 1900s, wasn't actually a potato famine. It was the British starved, or the English starved the Irish people by exporting all their potatoes over and out of Ireland. That was capitalism.
Government.
That was government. That wasn't communist. That was, you know, an example. But so if we take it in the literal sense of the words, then yeah. I mean, I'm pretty anti-establishment anyway. I mean, I am, no matter what, left, right, whatever. Yeah. I think that human beings, essentially, are decent, but we're easily corrupted. If we, as we were talking about earlier, Seth, are fed this information about what's good, we're told what's good, what's bad, when I think, actually, probably hundreds, thousands of years ago, we didn't need to be told what was good or bad. We could make up our own minds, and you know, that's it. But the systems that are in place now, they put you on one team or another, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground unless we make it for ourselves. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's my take on it. Anyway.
Like you say, communism comes from the word communal or commune or community. So in that sense, it's not bad at all. And I think on a small scale, like a communist type thing can work. Like everybody works together, everybody shares, and it can work on a smaller scale. And I think maybe that's kind of what the ashram is there's no central leader, and everybody's kind of contributing, and
and you know, it's decisions that are essentially committee based. Essentially, there's a head, of course, or there's someone who is like the spearhead, as he said, the figurehead. But it's always put out. Nearly everything we talk about is put out to the greater. You know, you never walk away and go, "I'm doing this." Right? Kentaro, tell everyone I'm doing this. It doesn't, work that way. The information just gets bandied around, and
if anything, I asked for too many opinions.
Well, I mean, there's nothing really wrong with that, but at the end, we need to come to a decision. So generally, it's someone's idea, what we do, but it's usually agreed on as well, rather than just pushed. But but it comes back again to the skill sets. Someone always has a better idea of how things work, depending on what that is. So it's yeah.
So, like, even this idea of establishment, like you said, people are naturally good, and you kind of sound like an anarchist a little bit. Oh. Seth likes this too. But that's great. I totally agree with that. But that's until some roving band of stronger ruffians comes around and then decides to put your fantasy to the test. And this is why, like, the example that I always use when I at this point is I use the idea of Mohenjo-Daro in India, which is like one of the oldest cities in the world. And they found through the evidence they were very advanced. I think we talked about this before. And they were totally vegetarian, but they also had no weapons. They didn't believe at all in any weapons. They had trade, and then eventually, the reason we don't hear about it and that name is not known so much, some neighboring city or some neighboring tribe decided, hey, these yogis, because there's lots of great carvings of them doing yoga poses. They probably had a very developed spiritual culture, but everything they have is ripe for the taking. They got lots of riches, they got lots of gold, they got like a nice sewer system, lots of beautiful women. Let's go take it. And so that's why they faded into the dust of history. And this is why the yoga that I follow from like Krishna and everything, he's born as a warrior in the warrior caste. He's very much, you need to protect, you need to be strong in this way. You need to be able to defend. It's very important. Very, very important. So we don't have weapons. We don't have any katanas here in Japan. We don't have any guns here. But we will rely on the police or the government if we need it, right? If some band of ruffians comes in, we either have to get our hands dirty or we have to ask someone else to get our hands dirty.
I would say ideally you should be prepared to protect yourself rather than going to the government.
I think I would have to agree with you as well, yeah.
So then we have to get some katanas and we have to train ourselves then?
Thankfully, Japan is super
peaceful,
pacifist.
Yeah,
people,
which is nice.
I don't see it being a problem. But I mean, there might not be a gang of ruffians that come, but who knows if the ashram gets bigger, and then with this own cult, there might be like a public image, and then what are these yoga people doing?
True.
You might have to defend yourself from that type of.
True.
The government might come after you because there's some yoga community getting too big, and
that way they're going to come after us through taxation.
Yeah, it's not going to be
economic economy.
Best of luck with that.
Yeah, this is where the anarchist in me says the entity that poses the most threat to you is the government. It's not roving gangs of thugs.
No, I would agree. Yeah. Stick it to the man.
But that's a good point. But those yogis that got wiped out because they didn't. We live in a jungle of a world. At least now, it's not utopia yet. So you have to be able to defend yourself.
Maybe it won't ever be utopia. Maybe this rule might be a universal truth that you need to have some kind of, because every animal, if you look at every animal, they have some way to defend themselves, either through running fast or through a tusk, through a horn or through big teeth or flying away. They all have some way to defend themselves. There's none of it. The ones that didn't, like the dodo bird, once we got there, they're gone.
Well, I believe it was their fault for being really delicious too.
Well, mostly, the reason they went extinct is because apparently, according to the accounts, the written accounts, the dodo bird, it would sit beside its family or behind, and if you killed one, the other ones would just look at it. They wouldn't do anything. No reaction. So they're easy to kill, easy to eat, and so they just kept on doing that.
That's why they say dumb as a dodo.
Yeah. They just didn't react, and then so slowly they're gone.
Yeah, I think the same is true. There were the giant tortoises from the Galapagos too. I think it is us wonderful British naval explorers and stuff. We I think rounded up sort of half a dozen of them, and we were going to bring them back to England. And I'm talking in the 18th century or something like that. And when you read the ship's log, they killed one to cook it and eat it. And according to the log, it was super delicious, the nicest thing they'd ever had. So before they got back to the UK, they were like, no one's going to miss another one. All of a sudden, they were all gone. Man's unrelenting quest for delicacies.
Yeah, I think at the heart of this, what we're talking about here is, you were saying that maybe this is human nature and we'll always be violent. But I believe that that isn't human nature for us to be violent. That is human conditioning. And I do believe that it's possible that our consciousness can evolve to where people don't feel threatened by others. They don't feel like they have a lack of resources to where there would be no violence and no need to defend yourself. But I think it's a long way off, perhaps, but I don't believe it's human nature to be violent.
The reason why I think it is because when I was a kid, and I was raised in the forest, I didn't really get to watch TV, I didn't get anything, but I remember one of the first things as a little boy that I used to do, pick up a stick, and I started to fight with the tree. Do something with it. It was like naturally I was drawn towards this.
But that doesn't have to be violent, that can just be play.
But what I'm saying is that little thing, it turns into something, and it evolves into something, right? It's playing, yes. But what are we playing for? We're playing to make our muscles strong. We're playing to make our reflexes conditioned. We're playing to condition ourselves for the environment, and then slowly it turns into something.
Yeah, well, I guess that's almost a like a primeval kind of inbuilt thing that we've got, that we are descended from Neanderthal man or whatever, who had to be that way, and the strong survive kind of thing. If we I don't think it's coming from a point of watching a war movie and deciding, I'm going to pick up a stick and go bang, 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 bang. Kind of also the innocence of kids. I don't think that. I think it's conditioning rather than like the human nature. I think it is like the violent tendencies. Can be maybe a myriad of reasons, but your particular upbringing, witnessing all this kind of thing, and coming from parents that have got that, so to more or lesser extent, but luckily not everyone's like that, and I think I think we're all born with good intent, and I think that's slowly conditioned out of us, or out of a lot of people.
Yeah, and like I believe it all comes back to fear and lack of love, and that's what turns people violent. If we were truly raised in a perfectly loving environment, then the child would never feel any need to be violent towards others or towards himself.
I'm sure that someone would be like this. They're not going to like it.
Well,
I know humans really well. I feel like I know humans really well. I know there's going to be someone that's like, I don't like this piece. I don't like it. I want to screw it up. I like chaos, because we like chaos. I think.
Exception to the rule, for sure.
I think that we like chaos, and then that's why we might have set up systems like that before. Maybe either we screwed it up ourselves, or a meteor came down and wiped out the system. But somehow that system is doomed to change.
I'm not saying it'll be a perfect paradise, but I think that child would hopefully be born to loving parents who can then channel that energy into something creative rather than destructive.
And so far, I haven't seen anyone who can be a perfect parent.
Yeah. But again, I'm not saying perfect. I'm just saying loving.
Yeah, perfection I don't think perfection exists in any way. I think it's something that we I think it's something that we want to attain in everything that we do, and how we want to be, but it is transcendental. I don't think we'll ever achieve that.
I agree.
We've got to settle for the best. We have to be the best. We have to try and make it the best. But I don't think there's always a fly in the ointment. There's always a hair in the soup. There is, but if you focus on the hair, you focus on the fly, and you don't focus on the soup, and then you're looking at it the wrong way. So that's...
and I'm thinking of like in a lot of religious and spiritual traditions, they have myths about, like, for instance, the Garden of Eden, that originally humanity was divine and whole, and then we fell and we had a fall from grace, and we descended into matter, which is into fear, into lack, into
all these things. So
I believe that may be referring to the fact that long time ago humanity was in this divine state, and we've fallen.
And do you remember what the first case of violence was?
Yeah, the brother of
Cain and Abel, right? Cain and Abel, yeah.
And then, do you remember why Cain was violent?
Was it over land or something?
No, it was because Abel, and this relates to my Vishnu Sahasranam. So Vishatara, which is Vishnu being the object of oblation, means the ones that we invoke, the one that we remind ourselves of whenever we do any sacrifice. So Abel, his sacrifices were pure and righteous. He always worked really hard. He did his best. And he offered his food and everything to God, and it was very acceptable. But Cain was kind of lazy. He was kind of selfish. And his sacrifices were not accepted by God. So he became jealous of his brother. And then he killed his brother. And then that made the two offshoots of humanity came from Cain and from Abel, right? The sons of Cain and the sons of Abel.
It was all jealousy.
But it fundamentally came down to the fact that he was full of ego in his work initially. He was jealous of Abel, but he initially didn't do the proper work. He didn't do it in the right way. So he became jealous as a result because, of course, the guy who does it properly does it properly. And so you're like, oh, he's great. But my thing is not good. I know I was wrong. You don't want to attack yourself, so you attack the other.
Maybe he also felt rejected by God, so he didn't feel like he received that love.
Yeah. But the point is, it's correct. But also he rejected God by not doing his best. Yeah.
I think in order to be rejected by God, you have to reject God first.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Everything starts from us. Yeah. So essentially, all violence, all aggression is inward going out, right?
True.
But also, you can blame Cain and Abel's thing on Adam and Eve because they're the ones that ate the fruit of forbidden knowledge. So,
that's it. Ignorance was bliss. They wanted to pick the apple, become wise. Never listen to a snake. That's what I basically took from that. Never listen to a snake.
Or never listen to a woman, because this isn't a woman.
I'm not going to say that. I always listen to women because women are very knowledgeable and they know exactly what we need to do. And I'm very sorry, Cassie, that was said in front of you.
No, I'm just joking. But it's interesting that there is like that in the original myth. Is that like
imagery?
Eve told Adam to eat the apple or something. It's like blame it on women.
She was the one that was.
Yeah.
But this is why I tend to move away from the Abrahamic stream, because I really like the way that the Shanthitown puts it, which is like actually our whole thing in here. This is just the Maya, right? And who is the Maya? Maya is also feminine, but it's just the cause, the ever-changing, conditioned reality in nature, and in some sense, the soul's descent into material. You can see it as a descent, but it's also maybe kind of like a video game, an enjoyment of some kind. But in our enjoyment of the material world, we get so separate from God and from the true bliss that we want to return back. So when a soul has endured enough material pollution, it wants to come back to source. Yeah.
Like you have to descend to ascend. You have to go to hell to go to heaven.
Yeah. Learn what we have to learn, or grow how we have to grow, etc. All these ideas are there. So that's why when we have the idea of oblation, of sacrifice, of yajna, as we call it in Sanskrit, which is like something we're not just endeavoring for a material thing, when we're endeavoring for something transcendental. Really hard, because transcendental is beyond our senses. It's beyond what the government, what was it? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and render unto God what is God. That's from Jesus, right? Is that like the government and whatever? In Jesus' time, he had to deal with the Roman Empire. In Krishna's time, he had to deal with Kamsa, who is also like a dictator in the same kind of sense. And it's a horrible system to deal with. But okay, no problem. We have to live in that system. We can't actually, there's no way we're going to overthrow the globalization that has occurred. There's no way. There's no way we can make a movement that's going to be big enough to do any veritable damage to the collective consciousness that the governments have made on everybody. I don't think it's possible. And even if we do, like you said, get big enough, they're going to be the ones that are going to stop us. Because they're the ones with the ultimate violence. They're the ones that ultimately have the nuclear weapons. We can't do anything really in that sense. So that's why we have to always remember and do our sacrifice from inside and do our work. And even if we're facing that tsunami that's coming and we have no control over what's going to happen, we have to always remember inside is what's important, and our own experience in life is the ultimate endeavor.
Just remember and do the duty.
Yeah, do the duty.
So in order to do my duty, I need to leave quite soon.
Yeah. So because of Kentaro having half the equipment, we have to dispel this nice dream of podcasting. The Shanthitown, the tent's broken down. Moving on. So it's good to have everybody, all four of us together.
Yeah.
And we need to welcome some female voice too.
Yes, we do. We definitely do.
Every episode we should throw variations in. I
think.
And this conversation is infinity. Like I always say, like we're just dipping our toes in. We're not even coming close towards finishing or having a conclusion. About this stuff. And that's why I think that this kind of idea of podcasting like this, if we really just keep it going, we have infinite content.
Never-ending conversation.
Exactly.
Never-ending story.
Exactly. Yeah. Enjoyable. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Ciao.